This is Geometry, Unit 6, working on slope, midpoint, and distance formula. We have our midpoint formula, which is the average of the x's. You add the x's and divide by 2, add the y's, divide by 2. We have the distance formula, where you're subtracting the 2 x's, squaring it, plus subtracting the 2 y's and squaring it. Then the slope formula. The slope formula is the rise over runs. So you subtract the y's, divided by subtract the x's. Notice the pattern where midpoint is the only one where we're adding x's and adding y's. All the other ones, you subtract x's or subtract y's. Our first example I have completed. We use numbers. So we took our x1, y1, x2, y2, plugged it into our slope formula. y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. Did our calculations. 2 minus a negative is actually 2 plus 1, which is 3. We did the same thing with midpoint. Calculated 1/2 comma 0. And we did the distance formula. You could go ahead, pause the video, see if you can work those values out yourself, and then come back and check your answers. Now we're going to try it using letters. So I would suggest, of course, to label your points. x1, y1, x2, y2. So our slope is going to be y2. We have 4 cats minus 1 cat over 3 apples minus 1 apple. So if you think about these as items, so you're not going to say 4c minus c is just 4. The c's don't cross out. But if it's 4 cats minus a cat, that's a total of 3 cats. And 3 apples minus an apple is going to be 2 apples. And there's nothing else we can do to simplify that. We don't use decimals, so we're finished with 3c over 2a. Next we can do midpoint. Midpoint is adding the x's together, divided by 2, comma, adding the y's together, divided by 2. So that's 4a divided by 2 and 5c divided by 2. And that can be simplified. 4 apples cut in half is just 2 apples. But 5 cats cannot be divided by 2 evenly, of course. So we're just going to leave it as 5c over 2. Then we have our distance formula. Using our formula from above, we see that we are going to take x2 minus x1 and square that quantity, plus y2 minus y1 and square that quantity. So I make my little check mark first. I do my x2 minus my x1 and square that, plus y2 minus y1 and square that, then draw the radical bar. You have 3 apples minus 1 apple. That is 2 apples squared. You've got to use parentheses because both the 2 and the a are being squared. 4 cats minus 1 cat gives you 3 cats. And you've got to have parentheses because you have 2 things that are being squared. The 3 and the c. Now, when we're going to square, when you square 2 apples, or 2a, that is 2a times 2a. So that's 4a squared. If that's all we were going to do, we could take the square root of 4a squared. But because we're adding another part, you cannot take the square root of this. 9c squared. 3 times 3 is 9, and c times c is c squared. You cannot take the square root of that. You're not allowed to do one side of the plus and the other side of the plus. So that's the best we can simplify it. That's what makes some of this better than using regular numbers. Let's come on over here. Try it again. You're welcome to pause the video. Try to find the slope, the midpoint, and the distance, and then come back and check your work. Our slope, we have x1, y1, x2, y2. Be sure to label your points. Our slope, remember, is 7b minus b and 3a minus a. That is 6b, 6 bananas, over 2 apples. Now, what makes this a little bit different, the 2 is not connected with the a. We can actually reduce the numbers, so we can call this 3 bananas over an apple. 3b over 1a. 3b over a. Then we have midpoint. Midpoint is the average of the x's. So a plus 3a divided by 2. And b plus 7b divided by 2. That gives us 4a over 2. And that gives us 8a over 2. Let's see, that would actually give us 8 bananas over 2. Sorry? Did you copy me exactly, or were you paying attention? So 2a, comma 4b. That would be the halfway point. Then we have our distance formula. So we take our x's. x2 minus x1, square that. y2 minus y1, and square that. That gives us 2a quantity squared. And that gives us 6b quantity squared. 4a squared plus 36b squared. And there, we cannot simplify that. Because of the plus, you cannot break that apart. You cannot take the square root. Last one. So we're going to look at our slope. So we want to label our points. This would be x1 and y1. This whole thing is x2, and this little piece is just y2. So we're going to take y2 minus y1 over x2. That's that whole piece, x2 minus x1. 2 dogs minus 2 dogs gives us 0 dogs. You can write that as 0D, or you can write that just as 0. 2 cats plus 2 elephants minus 2 cats, that crosses the cats out. And we're only left with 2E. That's kind of irrelevant, because if we're got a 0 in the numerator and not a 0 in the denominator, we're going to have 0 as an answer. We have our midpoint. The midpoint is the average of the x's. 2 cats plus 2 cats and 2 elephants. 2 dogs plus 2 dogs. 2D plus 2D. So I use the animal example, 2 cats plus 2 cats, to show you that it's just as simple as saying 2C plus 2C is 4C plus 2E and 4D over 2. So because we have the plus, we have to be able to divide on both sides of the plus. Because we don't have any odd numbers, we can divide the 4, we can divide the 2. We get 2C plus E, comma, 2D. That would be our midpoint. And our last distance, x2, which is 2C plus 2E minus 2C. We're supposed to square that. And we have 2D minus 2D. Well, here the 2C and the 2C cross out again. So we have 2E squared. 2D minus 2D is 0. They cross out. So I'll just save us some room right now and not write plus 0, because that's irrelevant. So when we square it, we get 4E squared. Now that we can take the square root of. You can take the square root of 4. You can take the square root of something squared. So we've got 2E as our total distance. Then our homework tonight . It's called the Cancer Walk.
Wait, how is it 2 pages?
We have 2 pages here. This first page is trying to come up with a set of data that we are going to plot down here. We have Eva that is going to start at the starting line and walk a constant 3 miles per hour. So Eva's going to have 0 miles at the start of the race, but after 1 hour, she's going to go 3 miles. And after 2 hours, she'll go 3 more hours, which is a total of 6, and 9, and 12, and 15, and it continues on and on and on. Olivia, she gets stuck in traffic before the race. She starts 2 hours late, so she's not going to start at the beginning. She's not going to start at 1 hour late. She's going to accomplish 0 miles at the 2 hour marker. But now she's going to travel faster. She's going to go 4 miles per hour. So she travels 4 miles. Then she's going to go a total of 8 miles and a total of 12 miles. And you can continue that pattern.
Wait, is this on page 12?
Yep. So then you should be able to see what your slope is. This slope is changing by 3s. So it'd be called 3x. So when you come down here, you'll end up graphing a line that is 3x. And you'll be graphing a line that is 4x, but starting 2 hours late. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I'm sorry. Starting 2 hours late. Time is going to be on the x-axis, and distance is going to be on the y-axis. So we're going to start 2 hours late. That's going to be over here. So we have Eva that's going at 3 miles slope, and we have Olivia that's going at 4 miles slope. So you're going to continue those and see if and where the two friends are going to meet up again. And then to finish this up, on the back side, you have some work problems. Answer some questions about Olivia and Eva, and then some practice problems for what we've been doing.